Hey everyone, you ready for this? I'm pumped for this deep dive. We're going to be talking about maker culture
Yeah,
and specifically how it can really help reshape India's economic future. So,
it's a great topic and a timely one too.
yeah, for sure. So, we always try to base these deep dives on things that our listeners are interested in, and we
Absolutely.
got a ton of requests to really dig into this idea of maker culture.
Yeah, and especially, like you were saying, its potential impact on India's economy.
Yeah, and it's something we've seen have like a really positive effect in other places, right?
Yeah,
Like if you look at the US or China or Japan or even like across Europe,
absolutely.
it's been a really powerful force. So the big question is, can that same kind of energy, that same kind of,
Momentum.
yeah, momentum, can it be harnessed in a place that's as, diverse and as complex as India?
That's really the question, isn't it?
Yeah, so to kind of set the stage, can you give us like a quick overview of what the economic landscape looks like in India right now? Like what are some of the major hurdles they're facing?
Yeah, so, you're talking about a country with a massive population, incredible potential,
Hmm.
but also facing some pretty significant challenges. One of the biggest is unemployment, especially among young people.
Right. Yeah.
And it's not just the number of jobs, it's also this gap between the skills that people are learning, like in the education system, and the skills that employers actually need.
It's like a mismatch. Yeah.
Exactly. So you've got this huge pool of talent, but they're not necessarily equipped to fill the roles that are out there.
And then on top of that, you've got, the economic inequality. Poverty is really concentrated in certain areas.
Right, it's a complex picture.
Yeah. And they're also, I think, pretty reliant on traditional industries and really need to diversify their economy, right?
Absolutely. For sustainable growth, they're going to need to innovate, create new sectors, and move beyond some of those traditional reliance.
So it's almost like this giant puzzle, right? With all these pieces that aren't quite fitting together.
That's a great analogy.
I mean, have you ever felt that way? Like
Oh.
you've got skills you want to contribute,
Oh,
but
yeah.
things just don't quite line up.
I think we all have at some point, yeah.
So okay, so we've got this kind of snapshot of the challenges. Where does maker culture come in? How does encouraging people to tinker and build things? How can that actually help address these issues?
Okay, well, here's the exciting part.
Okay.
Think of maker culture as this kind of catalyst for change. It's not just about making things, it's about a mindset, right? It's about
Yeah.
creative problem solving, hands-on learning, that kind of thing. And that can directly address these challenges we've been talking about.
So give me an example.
Okay, so take the skills gap. Maker spaces can provide practical training in a ton of different areas.
Right.
Coding, carpentry, electronics, you name it.
So instead of just like learning theory in a classroom, people are actually getting their hands dirty, building real stuff.
Exactly. And remember how we were talking about high unemployment among young people?
Yeah.
Maker culture can really spark entrepreneurship.
Okay.
It gives people the tools to turn their ideas into actual products, services, potentially new businesses.
So you're talking about creating jobs, not just filling them?
That's the idea. It's a shift from job seekers to job creators.
That's really cool. So what about those traditional industries you mentioned earlier, the ones that India needs to kind of move beyond? How does maker culture fit in there?
It can actually revitalize them. Imagine farmers learning sensor technology in a maker space and using that to optimize irrigation, or
Okay.
artisans, people making traditional crafts. They could be incorporating digital fabrication tools to create new designs, expand their
This
markets.
is like a fusion of old and new.
Exactly. It's not about rejecting tradition. It's about finding ways to enhance it, make it more efficient, more competitive.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this all connects. But what about the economic inequality we talked about?
That's where this gets really powerful. Imagine establishing makerspaces in underserved communities, right?
Yeah.
Giving people access to tools, resources, mentorship, regardless of their background.
That's huge.
It levels the playing field, gives everyone a shot at innovation.
Yeah, it's not just about having a good idea, it's about having the opportunity to make that idea a reality.
Exactly. And we're not just talking theory here.
Right.
We've seen this work in other parts of the world.
So let's talk about those success stories. What can India learn from places like the US, China, Japan, Europe?
Well, each region has its own flavor, but there are some common threads. You look at the US, they have this strong DIY ethos, a network of makerspaces like Tech Shop and Fab Labs.
I've heard about those.
Yeah, they provide tools, training, and it's led to a surge in small-scale manufacturing, this culture of making.
So it's like they've created a whole ecosystem.
Exactly. And then you go to China, they've embraced maker culture as a key driver of economic growth.
Interesting.
Look at Shenzhen. It's become this global hardware hub.
Yeah.
Prototypes get developed at lightning speed.
Wow, that's impressive.
And then Japan, they've always had this tradition of craftsmanship, precision.
Yeah, it's almost part of their DNA, isn't it?
It is. It shows in everything from robotics to consumer electronics.
Right.
And Europe, it's really interesting. You see this blend of traditional craft and digital fabrication, maker spaces popping up everywhere, people using 3D printers, laser cutters, all that.
So they're kind of taking the best of both worlds.
Exactly. And here's the thing. All these maker communities are interconnected.
Oh, I see.
They share ideas, inspiration. It's a global exchange of knowledge.
So it's not just about individual countries succeeding. It's like a global network of makers pushing the boundaries of innovation.
Exactly. And that's a really important perspective for India as it tries to, harness this power.
Yeah, they can learn from all these examples, adapt what works to their own context.
Exactly. And one of the most valuable lessons might be the importance of starting early.
Okay, what do you mean?
Introducing maker education at the school level. Imagine cultivating this next generation of creative thinkers, problem solvers, equipping them from a young age.
Right, from the start. Yeah, plant those seeds early.
Exactly. I mean, what if schools across India had dedicated maker spaces? Kids could experiment, build, learn by doing. It wouldn't just be about technical skills. It would be about fostering creativity, collaboration, a willingness to take risks.
That sounds pretty transformative.
It could be. It could really unlock India's potential in a whole new way.
Okay, so this is all really interesting, but I want to dive deeper into some specific examples of how this is actually playing out in India.
Absolutely. Let's talk about some of the inspiring initiatives that are happening on the ground.
Let's do it.
So let's start with Makers Asylum in Mumbai. It's really a fantastic example, like a hub for creativity and collaboration.
Okay, so paint a picture for me. What's it actually like? What's going on there?
So imagine this big open workspace filled with tools and projects and people from all walks of life, entrepreneurs, students, artists, even healthcare workers, all coming together to learn, to share ideas, and to build things.
It's like a community center for making stuff.
Exactly. And they have everything you could possibly need. Traditional woodworking tools, 3D printers, laser cutters, you name it.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, it's really impressive. And the projects that come out of there are incredible, too.
Like, give me an example.
So you've got entrepreneurs prototyping new products, students building robots for competitions, artists experimenting with different materials. I mean, during the pandemic, Makers Asylum was instrumental in producing PPE and medical supplies.
That's amazing. So it's not just about, like, fun projects. It's about stuff that actually makes a real difference.
Right. It's about using those maker skills to solve real-world problems. And it's not just about the tools and technology either. They offer workshops, classes, mentorship programs. It's a whole ecosystem of learning and support.
Okay, so if Makers Asylum is like the poster child for maker culture in India, what are some other examples of these kinds of initiatives taking root?
Oh, there are tons, and they're all so inspiring. Another one that comes to mind is Vigyan Ashram.
Okay, I haven't heard of that one.
So it's a school and innovation center in rural Maharashtra.
Okay.
And what's really cool about them is they integrate maker skills into their curriculum right alongside traditional subjects.
Interesting. So it's not just like an after-school program. It's actually part of the core education.
Exactly. So they're teaching carpentry, welding, electronics, computer programming, all of that, right alongside math and science and history.
So they're graduating with a really well-rounded set of skills. That's great.
Yeah, they're prepared for higher education if they want to go that route, but they also have the practical skills to, start their own businesses or find jobs in the trades.
They've got options.
Exactly. And it's not just about, learning the skills in isolation either.
Right.
They actually encourage the students to apply what they've learned to real-world problems in their communities.
That's cool. So what kind of projects are they working on?
They're designing irrigation systems for farmers, assistive devices for people with disabilities. They're even working on sustainable energy solutions.
Wow, that's impressive.
It is, and it gives them this sense of purpose.
Yeah.
They're not just learning for the sake of learning. They're actually using their skills to make a difference.
I love that. So they're becoming problem solvers, change makers.
Exactly. And speaking of empowering communities, there's also the Fab Lab network, which has been expanding rapidly in India.
Fab Labs, I've heard of those.
Yeah, so they're essentially digital fabrication laboratories, and they're equipped with all the latest technology, 3D printers, laser cutters, CNC machines, all that good stuff.
So it's like giving people access to these really high-tech tools that they might not otherwise have.
Exactly. And what's exciting is they're not just setting up these fab labs in big cities,
Okay.
they're also putting them in smaller towns and rural areas so people all over the country can have access to this technology.
That's amazing. So it's really democratizing innovation.
That's the goal, and the impact is already being felt. Entrepreneurs are using 3D printing to create prototypes, students are designing robots, healthcare professionals are fabricating custom medical devices.
It sounds like these fab labs are really becoming hubs for creativity and problem solving all over India.
They really are.
This is all incredibly inspiring, but I'm curious, what are some of the challenges or obstacles that still need to be addressed to really make this movement flourish in India?
I mean, it's really cool to see how much is already happening. It is. There's a lot of momentum building, but like you said, there are definitely some challenges.
Okay, so what are some of the biggest hurdles? What's standing in the way of maker culture really taking off in India?
Well, one of the biggest ones is resources.
Mm,
Setting up and maintaining a maker space, especially with all the equipment and technology, it takes money.
yeah, it's an investment for sure.
And not all communities have equal access to funding, especially in rural areas or underserved communities.
So it's kind of a chicken and egg problem.
Yeah.
You need the resources to get started, but it's hard to get the resources if you're starting from scratch.
Exactly. And that's where I think government support and private investment can play a really important role.
Okay, so it's not just about individual initiative, it's about creating a supportive ecosystem.
Right. It takes a village, and then there's the challenge of awareness.
Okay, what do you mean?
Well, even though there's growing excitement around maker culture, there's still a lot of people who don't really understand it.
Like, they don't see the value.
Yeah, some people still see making as a hobby, something that's not as important as traditional academics.
So it's about changing perceptions, showing people how those maker skills can actually translate into real-world careers.
Exactly. We need to highlight the critical thinking, the problem solving, the collaboration, all those skills that employers are looking for.
Right, it's not just about training the next generation of engineers. It's about giving them a broader set of skills that will help them succeed in any field.
And that brings us to another important point, which is making sure that maker education is relevant to the job market.
Okay, so it's not just about encouraging creativity for creativity's sake. It's about making sure those creative skills can actually lead to jobs.
Right. We need to be thinking about what industries are growing in India, what skills they need, and how maker education can help fill those gaps.
So it's about being strategic, connecting the dots between education and the economy.
Exactly. And that requires collaboration between educators, industry leaders, policymakers. Everyone needs to be on the same page.
It's a big challenge, but it sounds like it's worth it. I mean, we've seen what maker culture can do in other parts of the world. The potential is huge.
It is, and I think India is really well positioned to become a leader in the maker movement. They've got the talent, the entrepreneurial spirit, and a growing network of maker spaces and initiatives.
So to wrap things up, what's the one thing you want our listeners to take away from this deep dive?
I think it's this. Anyone can be a maker. You don't need to be an engineer or a tech wizard. It's about that spark of creativity, that desire to solve problems to make something new.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be some big, complicated project. It can be something small, something that brings you joy, something that makes a difference in your own community.
Exactly. Just start somewhere, explore, experiment, and don't be afraid to fail.
That's great advice. Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into maker culture. It's been an inspiring conversation, and we hope it sparks some ideas for you, our listeners.
It's been my pleasure.
So until next time, keep making, keep innovating, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible.